Seattle. Not tonight, but a long time ago. Remy's waiting inside a church, a house of refugee and a neighborhood gone wrong around it. He believes a single card will tell him the whole story. On the one hand, his people disowned him. His wife Belladonna was taken off this earth well before her time. And he's racked up more enemies than the legendary Kingpin himself in a tenth as many years in the crime scene. On the other hand, he's the best thief in the whole world. He's got a power to charge things, which makes sure he's gonna stay the best. And this payment means he's never again got to take a job that'll eat away at him. The superstitious Remy decides a single card will tell him if he's gonna win or lose when the last card's turning. Flipping a card! He sees it's an ace of spades and spontaneously exclaims,
"Game."
A voice behind him asks him if that's the card of death.
"Maybe for you it will be."
Gambit snarls and charges the card with kinetic energy, sending it flying to the upper levels of the church before it ricochets away. Mr. Sinister appears right beside Remy. He quips that, if it weren't himself, he'd be very worried about Remy's skills. How? Gambit wonders! Sinister reminds him he is himself and acknowledges that Remy does superior work. Very superior work. He's impressed him, and Sinister's not easy to impress. Gambit stresses that Sinister paid him to round up some bad folks. He did what he was paid to do. He doesn't need Sinister's compliments now. He just needs their deal settled. Revealing a strange vial that he kept in an inner pocket of his suit and tossing it to Gambit. Sinister remarks it was a most peculiar fee to request, but a reasonable one for him at least. And he trusts for Libo as well. Trust! All ya want, Gambit retorts, and grabs the vial. Curious! He can't resist the temptation to ask him about those men he gathered, Scalphunter and the others. What makes them worth this much to a man like Sinister? He could have got them himself! Sinister declines to answer, only grinning enigmatically. Never mind, Gambit gives up. He assumes that some things are better left unknown. Another thing he has to tell Sinister. No more jobs for him! This was the last. Don't call. Don't write, he stresses. He believes in the cards. He's out of this game here and now. Sinister retorts that he will be out when he hears from Sinister that he's out. And that will only be after one more job. Sinister's new. Associates require Remy's specific talent for insinuating himself in places he doesn't belong.
Believe this? Essex, as of today, you can't afford me anymore.
Gambit angrily snaps. Sinister retorts that every man has a price to charge. He thinks he knows Remy's. Beast is holding the severed head of Nanny, the robot, cheerfully reciting verses of Shakespeare's Hamlet. Alas, poor Yorick. I knew him, Horatio, a fellow of infinite jest, of most excellent fancy. He hath borne me on his back 1,000 times. And now, how abhorred in my imagination he is, further dissecting Nanny's head. Beast wonders why he shouldn't make that 1,001 times. With all due apologies to the Bard and his college drama club, he's got a land skimmer to finish configuring out of their wrecked Shi'ar space shuttle remains. Hopefully soon, Hank, Trish Tilby urges him. She's freezing, even in these new clothes she's wearing. Hank wonders where they are from. Is there a Macy's Antarctica nearby? Joseph explains. He reconfigured the clothes Nanny's robotic children were wearing. He could do the same for Hank. Waste not. Well, not, I suppose, Hank replies. He is fine, as long as Joseph can also maintain this magnetic field around them to keep the cold down. Beast suspiciously ponders that both events suggest that Joseph's powers are waxing, probably due to the strong polarity of the region. He wonders if that also means that his other, less desirable personality might be on the rise as well. After all, this was Joseph's sanctuary when he was Magneto. The amnesia he suffers from has been a blessing for the world, because it is safe from a madman. And for Joseph, because he's been given the chance to change his life, unencumbered by his past sins. Addressing Joseph, Beast remarks that, if he's that gifted, can't he use his magnetic powers and newfound fashion sense to help Hank fashion this ship? Joseph concurs. If it will help them to get back to New York, that they might make short order of the chaos that has followed from Operation. Zero tolerance! Hank retorts that all this scrap metal is going to be capable of doing is skidding them across Antarctica, where maybe they can get to a base and radio for some real help, and Rogue interjects, and retorts they aren't going too far. Just far enough to free Remy. And if he's too stupid to know he needs rescuing, that's too dang bad. Somewhere else, Gambit opens his eyes, only to realize he is lying on the floor, surrounded by absolute darkness. He wonders where he is. A voice swiftly provides him with the answer. He is being held in a place of confinement until such time as his trial's commencement. Not so loud! Remy protests. He can hear him even if he's not yelling. The mysterious voice retorts the traitors that are brought to this place need not bark orders. Gambit impatiently clarifies he came to this place. He wasn't brought. He warns his captor to show himself like he has, or he'll find him. The voice retorts, that Gambit is the coward of all mutant kind, and promises him a fate fitting his crimes. I know your voice, Sinister. Gambit snarls. He warns him to show himself or he'll gladly add another minor regret to his list of major ones. Hold your tongue. The voice snaps, and Gambit finds himself blasted by an energy beam. As he collapses to the ground, the voice announces that Remy is guilty, and he will be found guilty. In due time, but not quite yet. There are still other players set to arrive. The seemingly impenetrable vault unexpectedly opens, and the X-Men and Trish Tilby rush inside. Beast asks him if this is his doing. Joseph insists that, like he told him, he has no knowledge of this place, save that it was here. Rogue remarks that if Joseph didn't open the door, they see who did. As they move forward, they come across a giant statue of Themis, the ancient Greek goddess of justice. Rogue wonders, what is this place? And who is she? Is this her fortress? Could it be? Rogue, Trish replies. As for who she is, she thinks, justice, Hank interrupts her. She is blind justice. To be precise, he thought this Citadel might be some forgotten mystery of the savage land, but she's a far more northern concept. Rogue remarks that whoever's got this place, they've got Gambit and she wants him back now. She proposes they split up and look around. If there's any trouble. Trish venomously retorts that there's always trouble when they're all involved. Still suffering, Joseph announces he will take the basement and proceeds to go. Rogue asks him if he's still having trouble. Joseph explains he just feels ill. Rogue asks him if he wants to sit this out. Joseph retorts, he is an X-Man! He will be fine. He contemplates that, if he can manage to keep standing. The more he comes to remember of himself, his past as the villain Magneto, the less well that self feels. The corridors he sees around him are familiar. Did he build this place? Did he live here? Beast certainly thinks so. His memories feel closer to him, as is hovering over, just beyond his body. He wonders why. Rogue opens a cell door and asks if anyone's here. Surprised, she discovers a brooding Remy inside. Remy urges her not to come in here. Rogue asks him if he's crying. Gambit replies he isn't, and wouldn't want that idea getting out. It would ruin his reputation. Right. He asks her to leave him. With her love came something else, something he never took a hard look at before. His conscience. Rogue argues she's not going anywhere. She's here to help him. Remy urges her to kiss him again, and kiss him long and hard, and use her power to suck him out of himself. Rogue replies she can't. That would take his... Gambit cuts her off and insists he wants his memories stolen. He can't live with them anymore, turning away from her. He tells her to forget it. That'd just doom her too. Choice was his. Always. Rogue tells him that Spat made her remember things she got from Remy. Before she finishes her phrase, Gambit demands she get out. But Rogue protests. Remy insists she gets out. He claims he doesn't love her, now or never. He asks her to go. What'll happen here must happen. He's ready to face that, alone. The hell you will, Rogue retorts. She doesn't believe a word he just said. Grabbing him, she urges him to get up. Gambit refuses. Rogue retorts, she just found him, and she isn't about to lose him. Whatever's eating at him, they'll work through it together. Far away from here. She tells him to put his arms around her. They'll fly and find the other X-Men and get out of this weird place. Turning away from her again, Gambit apologizes. It sounds pretty, but it just can't be. Rogue asks him why. Remy explains he deserves this. He chose to come here. Don't you understand? A desperate Rogue exclaims. She loves him, unconditionally. Remy retorts love isn't always enough. Rogue insists that yes, it is. Gambit angrily asks her to stop. This is what will be! He built a house of cards and it's come down on him! He always knew it would. He has to go through this. With teary eyes! Rogue retorts she's never had anyone touch her heart like he did. Never! Why can't she have that? Why can't she be happy? Who says he has to do whatever this is instead of spending his life with her? I do! I, Erik the Red! A stentorian voice replies, and the Citadel's owner finally makes his entrance, accompanied by Spat and Grovel. This new, mysterious Erik, the Red exclaims that the moment is at hand. All his months of preparation and planning shall now pay off. He argues that the mutant Gambit no longer deserves the life he now leads. The day of retribution is upon him. Grovel asks his boss if he wants Gambit crackled in the head. Or lower, Spat suggests. Erik the Red urges them to do with them as they will, and then bring them to the arena and wait for his return. He will prepare himself presently. He announces and departs. As Spat blasts Rogue with her energy spear, Gambit, plead her not to hurt Rogue. Spat retorts, she can't be more hurt than he's already hurt her. In Antarctica, in a large penumbral room, resembling a medieval courtroom, the robot known as Ferris announces that Erik the Red has arrived for the prosecution. Grinning, Erik confirms that. He stands ready. Ferris presents the players of this trial. The accused, Remy Lebeau, pointing at Remy, whose head is placed on a guillotine. The robot clarifies that he was known at the time of his crimes as Gambit. This ain't necessary, you, Gambit protests, but Ferris cuts him off. Silence! Speak only when addressed by the court. Ferris presents the jury. A selection of Gambit's peers. Beast, Maggott, Rogue, Psylocke, and a human woman. They all have their hands shackled with metallic manacles. Gambit wonders who Maggott is, but Ferris sternly silences him again and presents the defendant. His fellow X-Man, Archangel. Our chained Archangel is at loss. Defendant! Trial for what? He wonders who Erik the Red is and asks him to take these restraints off him. This is idiotic. Ferris again shushes him and clarifies that he will speak only when addressed by the court. Satisfied, Erik the Red notes that Archangel is the perfect man for this task. Warren assumes he's got no choice, since he's shackled. But even if he does go along, who's gonna judge this trial? Erik the Red argues they all judge each other in their own ways. Light! He exclaims, and the lights are turned on, revealing statues of fallen mutants behind him. Erik explains that these are effigies of the souls swept away in an unforgettable holocaust. Many had names lost in the bloody currents of their massacre, but the two behind him were known. Prism and Scaleface were their names before their brutal deaths. Deaths all but enacted by Remy. Gambit that he stands accused of the crime of mass murder of the Morlocks. Archangel interjects and tells him to hold on a minute. Who in blazes are you? He asks Erik the Red. He stresses that Erik the Red isn't real. He's always a cover for someone else. Cyclops. The first time, as he recalls, considering the possibility that Erik is indeed Scott, he asks him if this is his idea of some kind of joke. Or did he finally snap and go nutso evil like Professor X? Scott always did follow his lead. He argues that whatever else Gambit may be, and they all had their doubts about him in the past, he's an X-Man first, and one doesn't let another fall. Erik retorts, when that has ever mattered, what have the X-Men really done for their own kind? They shelter one or two in their precious school and leave hundreds of others to fend for themselves. And how do they choose those they will help? Take the attractive and powerful and leaving the deformed and destitute Morlocks to live beneath the streets of their city, allowing them to ingest the refuse of humanity for decades, then standing by idly while they are exterminated. Gambit wonders who's on trial here. Them or him. Point well. Taken. It's most definitely you, boy, Erik the Red replies. Gambit! Retorts. He stopped being a boy long ago. And yet he doesn't act like a man, Erik notes. A man would confess his crimes and accept his punishment. Remy confesses that he's done some things he's ashamed of. However, These aren't the people that need to hear his apology. Alec reminds him that those people are dead! At his hands! Therefore, their ears and theirs alone will have to serve as witness for his atrocities. Rogue turns to Beast and asks him if he notices someone who should be here, but isn't. Hank tells her she's right. Joseph's the only one of them unaccounted for. It has to be him! But why? Why would he do this? Rogue turns to Erik the Red and calls him out. Joseph! Bemused, Erik asks her not to disgrace him with such ludicrous assertions. Gambit's own assertions, not so abhorrent. Joseph would be the one tried this day. He instructs Ferris to show their pathetic accomplice into their court. Two mechanical creatures bring in a half-conscious, aching and tattered Joseph. Erik remarks that this Joseph is sickening. He renounced who and what he truly is, and then embraced his mortal foes, becoming one with them. He has already been judged and found so unworthy as to not even be allowed the time of this esteemed court. But enough speculation, he adds. Clasping Remy's head, he asks him if he will confess to these people the crime he has committed. Which one? Gambit! Audaciously asks. Erik clarifies that they do not speak here of his petty larcenies. They speak of his blood betrayal, the blackest moment in his long line of blasphemous actions. Gambit remarks that, if he means his dealing with Sinister, then sure, he admits it. He worked for him. He had a heart of ice back then. Belladonna was dead. He didn't care if he lived or died. He figured he'd never loved again, so he cast his fate with whoever came his way. It turned out to be somewhat sinister. He wanted Gambit to assemble some Mertzes to break into an impenetrable community. Sinister had something Gambit needed. Badly. So he agreed. They were big, ugly, and mean. Remy did what he was paid to do. Beast is at loss. Gambit worked for Mr. Sinister. And he didn't tell them. Rogue is shocked to discover that Gambit was at bed with one of their greatest enemies. For how long, Remy? She asks him. Gambit retorts. It isn't like that. It was something he did and wasn't proud of. But once he joined the X-Men, he put all that behind him, just like she did once. Erik, the Red insists that a man can't set aside his past. A man's character is the sum of his actions. Archangel alerts him that Gambit has proven himself time and time over. He doesn't like what he's hearing, but the fact is, men can change what they are. They can escape the darkness in their souls. He reclaimed his from Apocalypse. Joseph is turning his own life around. And Gambit. Fool! Erik interrupts. Warren and viciously informs him that Gambit is directly responsible for the darkness that befell him. He accuses Archangel that he's quick to defend a man who so permanently scarred him. Flustered, Archangel wonders what he means and asks Gambit what he's talking about. Nothing. Remy refuses to reveal. Erik urges Gambit to tell Archangel exactly who it was that he so efficiently assembled that night. He urges him to tell them all how much evil he and he alone congregated in the name of greed. Remy insists it had nothing to do with greed. He tells Erik he's got nothing to say in front of them. Whoever Erik is, Remy believes he already must know where he's getting to. He encourages Erik to tell them if he wants. Tell them all, and get it over with. Psylocke hesitantly reveals that she knows what it is. Erik relishes. The prosecution calls Psylocke to testify. Betsy reveals that she knows the names of some of those Gambit assembled. Arclight, Scrambler, Scalphunter, Vertigo, Harpoon, Riptide, and Sabretooth. Evil beings with one intention, to become marauders of the underground and destroy any Morlocks they found there. Oh, because that madman, Sinister, deemed their existence scientifically useless. These memories have been locked away in her mind for months, since she mind-linked with Remy. Gambit intervenes. He isn't saying it isn't true, but he is saying a man can change. He doesn't want anyone to forget what he's done, just forgive. He suspected Psylocke knew the secret. He could have killed her long ago and silenced the secret forever, but he didn't. He isn't a villain. Bursting with rage, Archangel realizes that Gambit created the Marauders! He cussed his wings. He did that to him, and then he stood by his side, pretended to be his friend, and never said a damn word about it. I should drop that blade on your neck myself, traitor! He growls. Turning to Betsy, he realizes she knew about it all this time and she never told him. Psylocke retorts she didn't know. Well, she did, but it only now came back to her. After all she's been through, save it! Warren retorts. He also tells Gambit to defend himself. He'd like to see him try. Grinning evilly, Erik announces there is no defense. Of course, this is only the tip of the proverbial iceberg. More of a falling glacier, he quips. As the defendant has shown a distinct lack of cooperation in these matters, the prosecution calls a special witness who can get more fully to the heart of the matter. The court calls the reformed villainous rogue to the defendant's box. Somehow, controlling her movements with his powers, Erik forces her to approach Gambit. Rogue wonders what he's doing to her and asks him to get out of her head. She begs him not to make her. Out-advises her not to struggle. She knows she wants this. Want what? Rogue wonders. Erik encourages her to kiss Gambit, steal all his secrets once and for all, and share them with the court. Teary-eyed, Rogue begs Erik the Red not to make her do this. She doesn't want to do this. She can't. Gambit tells her to feel no responsibility. It isn't her doing. He only pleads her to find a way to forgive him for what she's about to see. Gambit. Rogue mumbles. And then, manipulated by the mysterious villain, she is hopelessly attracted to Remy and proceeds to kiss him. At once. Rogue helplessly relives Gambit's memories. She sees Gambit as he shows the Marauders the way into the Morlock tunnels. He's scared because, with every step he takes, he knows something's bad gonna happen. He watches. Watches it start. Blood. So much blood. He's horrified. He tries to stop them, but no. The one, Sabretooth, nearly kills him. Gambit interjects and claims he didn't know. He thought it might be something illegal. He didn't know it would be something so awful. That night changed him hard. He sickened himself so much he almost died there. Sometimes he wishes he had. He couldn't stop the ones he gathered, so he helped whoever he could to get out. He managed to snatch one little girl out of harm's way. He doesn't know who she was. Bones sticking every which way out of her face, but that was all he could do. Erik lashes out at him. Save one in the face! Of how many others? Save one from the genocide you set in motion? Are they to applaud him for this? Reward him for being the kindest of the war criminals? Rather than try him, and then Sabretooth, and then... How dare you! Rogue screams at that very moment, her eyes reddish as she manifests Gambit's powers, charging a card with kinetic energy and releasing it. A furious Rogue asks Erik how he dares violate her like that. He mentally raped her. His justice has left her pregnant with a new personality, and the exact one she wanted to get to know, like a real, normal woman. Erik retorts, she's not normal, she's a mutant, as they are all. Mutants disgusted with the acts of one of their own. Though he can easily avoid her ill-aimed shot, they cannot so easily turn their heads from the barbarity of their fellows, as the card strikes right on Beast's manacles, breaking him free. Hank informs Erik that Rogue wasn't aiming for him. He forgot he's dealing with the X-Men. They're held together on levels he can't even imagine. Suddenly, Eenie and Meanie make their appearance and begin eating through Archangel's chains. Warren admits he never thought he'd be so glad to see two matter-eating slugs. Now, the only question is, who does he want to punch more? Rogue lashes at Erik the Red and pummels his face, vowing that he's gonna pay for what he's done. Better yet, he's gonna suffer like he made her suffer, no matter who he is. And no jury in the world will find her guilty for doing it to him. Neither. Erik suggests she places her anger where it belongs, in the heart of the man she loved. He suggests she and her teammates judge him now and forevermore. He suggests they let him live out a life sentence, a life with the knowledge that he has betrayed a race, betrayed his friends, betrayed the love of his life, and in doing so, betrayed himself. He is through with him! Turning to Ferris, he orders him to lead him to his chambers. Let the deliberation begin! He shouts and raises his hand, unleashing a destructive blast that begins bringing down the building. Beast realizes They have to evacuate immediately. He tells Psylocke to help Joseph. Rogue interjects and informs him she'll help Gambit. Gambit refuses and begs her to save herself. Psylocke urges everyone to gather in her shadows. She can teleport them. Remy pleads Rogue to let the walls come down on him. Rogue insists she won't just leave him here to die in self-pity. Really doesn't suit him. Behind them, Psylocke urges Rogue to hurry. As Betsy disappears and everything begins crashing down, Gambit realizes that Psylocke's over. Rogue retorts, "They aren't going Psylocke's way," and flies upwards, carrying him with her as they flee the collapsing installation. Gambit thanks her for believing in him. He promises what he was isn't what he is now. Who said I believe you? Remy. Rogue retorts and lets go of him. Remy collapses to the icy ground. Outside the now demolished complex, Rogue clarifies that she just said she wouldn't let him die in there. Out here, it's up to him, whether he lives or dies. She doesn't care anymore. Gambit insists he doesn't care if she leaves him here, but she has to understand. Rogue interrupts him and he thinks wrong. If he thinks she can understand. Remy accepts the fact he's earned her hatred, but pleads her to at least take him somewhere that'll give him a chance to get back home. Home! Rogue retorts. She argues he doesn't have a home. Not with her, not with the X-Men. She tells him to fend for himself. He seems to have done a good job of that in the past. But, I love you, Gambit retorts. Rogue tells him that you're honest with the people you love. Otherwise, it's a gamble. Saying this, she tosses the Queen of Hearts right at his feet and quickly vanishes in the horizon. Jet flying rapidly along Antarctica. Ferris informs his master that they have achieved cruising velocity and they are untracked. Life forms remaining in the Citadel vicinity now number only 2. Your desire? The robot asks him. Erik the Red admits that he desires much. Though fulfilling, this day was the beginning of a long-anticipated epiphany. For the moment, however, he desires most to get rid of this ridiculous armor. Ferris agrees. As the robot helps him undress, it asks Erik why this other guise was necessary. Erik replies that he has learned that victory is best measured over time. One minor win can trigger greater victories in the future, and it is careful planning he is interested in now. The gradual erosion of the forces set against him and a deliberate construction of the society he desires. As he magnetically moves his helmet towards himself, he argues that this is how a world is built. One stone at a time, each put in its proper place at the proper moment. Terrace asks him if he should dispose of the Erik the Red garments. Not just yet, Ferris, Erik replies. He may still have need of them. There is a certain liberation to be found in moving amongst your enemies, completely unknown. He may walk this path once more before all is said and done. True, he has never been one to hide behind masks. But then again, hey, Magneto is no longer the man he once was.